glad we are still finding the opportunities to get together and hear from amazing girl geeks about what they're working on. So tonight we are having a panel of female founders of dev tool startups who will be sharing about their stories and what some industry trends are and really help educating us in that space.
Women innately just want to help, right? Like we want to help solve other problems and other people. And when you're in dev tools, you get to interact with your customers a lot more than you might be in more of like an external facing product role. And so I think that there's a strong opportunity to recruit women to dev tools.
I love the connection too between new dev tools and getting more women and underrepresented groups in the dev tools world. I wouldn't have thought of that.
We need to be able to just support more women in developer tools, and there just needs to be a few pioneers, right? To just say that it's cool.
You can get started like whenever you want, even if you just want to start it as a side project, and you don't really need anyone's permission. Invest in the people that are cheering for you. So yeah, I would say go for it if anyone wants to.
We just need to say, this is what we're doing. Hey, people, come join us. Learn from like all of you amazing women in what you do, and just kind of have some people to say, yes, let's all do this together.
And then we're going to have 3 JavaScript engineers talk really quickly about some things they're working on or have worked on.
So a lot of my day is definitely spent in Chrome dev tools. So I just wanted to share some tips and tricks that I've learned along the way that have really helped me get my job done on a day-to-day basis.
So EmberJs is an open source free JavaScript client-side framework which helps us in building web applications. There are different kind of other JavaScript frameworks like React, Angular that you might have heard of.
My goal is to answer for you 2 questions. First, what is a progressive web app, or PWA as the cool kids say, and why might you want to build one?
Hi, I'm Sukrutha. I am CTO of Geek X. I also work at Salesforce as an engineering manager by day. Super excited for tonight's virtual dinner, or should I say dinner in air quotes, not the virtual part. So obviously, like with COVID and everything, we have taken it virtual, but we used to have these in real life. So Angie, how does it feel to be doing these virtual dinners?
It feels good. I'm glad we are still finding the opportunities to get together and hear from amazing girl geeks about what they're working on. So tonight we are having a panel of female founders of dev tool startups who will be sharing about their stories and what some industry trends are and really help educating us in that space. And then we're going to have 3 JavaScript engineers talk really quickly about some things they're working on or have worked on. We are going to move on to the panel portion of the evening. We have 4 panelists, actually 3 panelists, and Renee, who is going to be our moderator tonight. So Renee is a principal at Amplify Partners, where she focuses on developer tools and infrastructure startups. She graduated from Harvard with and also an MBA from Stanford GSB. Welcome, Renee.
Hi guys, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me. Angie, are we ready to kick it off?
Yes.
Great. Well, I am so excited to moderate this panel just because we have so many fabulous women on it. And so without further ado, I thought that all of our panelists could introduce themselves and talk about their path to becoming CEO.
I can go first. I'm Shanea. I am so excited to be here with really great personal friends and just people who are just inspiring me every single day. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called CodeSee, and we are a code comprehension platform that helps professional developers quickly explore, understand, visualize, and reason about their code bases. And we're just really, really excited to help JavaScript developers really understand, onboard into new code bases, really understand how it works with our new system. So we're really, really excited to be here and chat about our journey. Michelle, why don't you go next?
Oh, sure. So hello, I am Michelle Ufford. I'm the CEO of Notable, which is a early stage startup that is focused on collaborative Jupyter notebooks for data-driven enterprises. And so I am very excited to be here. This is actually my first talk as a CEO officially, so this is going to be fun. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marissa Montgomery, and I'm the founder of Instantish. So we're building an issue tracker that is for small teams that move quickly. And it's different in two ways. One is that it's designed for everyone in the company to use, so not just engineers or designers. And the second thing is that it integrates really closely with Slack. So yeah, also excited to be here. Thanks.
Great. No, those are wonderful intros. And, my first question would just be, other than building something meaningful for the world, which all three of you are doing, what do you love most about your day-to-day?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. I really love, so I get a chance to talk to developers just like everyone here, basically every day. And I get to hear about their problems. I've personally experienced the same problems that we're solving. And as we're building CodeSee, understanding large-scale code bases is exactly what everybody else deals with. And so I get a chance to just really not only learn a lot, but just build something that I know that my people need, essentially. So that's probably the most fun.
For me, it's everything, actually. Like I feel like I am having the time of my life, like living my best life. And that sounds cheesy, but it's true. And even the hard days, right? So there's a lot of long days, a lot of like hard things and challenges that come up, but yet it feels different. Like it feels different because we have built such an amazing team. It's such a positive environment, and it's really much more focused on like problem solving and how can we, rather than, focused on all the reasons why this might not work. And so it's just been such an extraordinary experience.
Yeah, I feel very much the same way. I just feel like very creatively fulfilled every day with what I'm doing. And it's cool because like as a CEO, you obviously wear many different hats, like you're hiring. I code probably 3 to 4 out of 4 days out of the week still. So I really enjoy that. And also just working with an awesome team and getting to talk to customers is really like exciting and inspiring.
I think all of us have probably worked at big companies before. And so I feel like it's just this really awesome transition to be able to like not be at a big company, but then you get a chance to like create your own company. It's a really awesome experience to be a part of that.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And, got what you love. And maybe in the opposite fashion, what do you feel like is most misunderstood about being a CEO in DevTools or just an early stage CEO generally?
I think for me, it's a lot about like the sales aspect of it. And that you don't just get to code every day, because like I get a chance to code and I get a chance to like work on the product just as much, particularly at this stage, as any other person in the company. But I think that particularly if you're venture backed like we are, I actually get a tremendous amount of help often by a lot of people. When we were raising, I texted Renee and Michelle very often, right? And so, it's not, you have to do all of these other things. Sure, there's new things that I'm doing, like learning about HR, learning about accounting and finance. But those are all just a really great opportunity to learn new things. And I think that part is misunderstood, and particularly when you're building a product for your own market. Like the selling part of it is just like, you're just talking to your people essentially.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that what I did not fully understand was how much of the job is really just translation and communication and translation between your engineers and your potential customers and your investors and your advisors. And it's just a completely different way of communicating. And so even though I had gotten into a pretty good place in terms of speaking with engineers and with business leaders, it is very different when you're trying to do sales calls, right? Like the way that you approach it or the types of things that you talk about are very different. And you really have to kind of shift and evolve, and then yet still be able to go back and talk to the engineers and business leaders. And so I think that was something that was unexpected, but has been very positive.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. It's a lot of context switching. And when I kind of envisioned building a company, I envisioned, spending a lot of time just designing and coding with the team, but it's a lot of like communication and finding the people that are most excited about your product and communicating really closely with them and keeping them updated. And then also I was surprised just at how much time like hiring and interviewing takes up. And I mean, obviously a super valuable exercise and great use of time, but that was definitely something that surprised me.
Oh, those are great answers. I wouldn't have thought about how much, selling and hiring and just overall I thought my cross-functional communication days were Google only, but it sounds like it keeps going. And, because a lot of the folks on this call are technical and we had some fantastic technical talks, I would be curious what trend everyone is most excited about in the DevTools world that's kind of upcoming. And Marissa, do you want to maybe kick us off?
Sure. Yeah, I don't know if this is a trend or maybe kind of a theme, but I've been really excited when I see kind of like the blending of the different stages of the engineering lifecycle. So you have like, you're discussing what work you want to build, you're creating issues, you're writing code, and then there's the whole PR and code review process and then deploying and monitoring. And it's been really cool to see, like there's the typical concept of linting where while you're in your IDE editing your code, you have this tool that's, making suggestions that you'd normally catch in code review, which is like a later stage. So I've been seeing a lot of interesting things like that, like design linting. And it's been cool to see GitHub's code scanning feature as well, which is like they scan your code base. I think it's opt-in, obviously, but they scan your code base for secrets that you might have published publicly, which you would have caught much later. So it's kind of cool to see new tools and features that kind of blend those stages together.
Michelle, you want to go next?
Oh, sure. So for me, I'm a data person. And so it's the convergence of big data and machine learning and data visualization with dev tools. And I find that really exciting because when I was doing a lot of development work, there was so much stuff that was tedious, right? It was just the routine stuff or just trying to track down and understand the code base or, all of these things that were tedious and were not really like value add to the company. And I thought, man, I just wish I could get to the cool stuff a lot faster. And so I see that with the convergence of these things, and I think with like the kinds of dev tools that Marissa and Shanea are building, I think we're going to see that you get more time to spend on the fun stuff and less time worrying about, why did my code base break again?
Yeah, thanks. I was actually about to mention that I actually am really fortunate to get to ride this trend, that as new types of people, women, underrepresented people, get into engineering, our dev tools need to evolve with it. And I get a chance to build a developer tool to help people learn how large-scale code bases work so that we can spend more time building the things that we were meant to be building, as opposed to spending 60% of your time figuring out where this line of code is. And so I see, there are a bunch of startups that are kind of popping up in that space to really help, you understand and build features faster and help you understand in a very different way than traditionally you've had to understand a code base. Because traditionally, the way that you get it in your head is you read code one line at a time, you hold it in your head, you imagine data as it flows through your system. And that just doesn't work for everybody. And so I'm I'm excited to solve a problem like that because I've personally struggled with that problem of holding whole code bases in my head. And so I see that as a starting trend as these tools start to merge together, how, we add visuals, how we add visualizations, and just make it easier for people to comprehend so that we can, do our jobs better.
Yeah, I love the connection too between new dev tools and getting more women and underrepresented groups in the dev tools world. I wouldn't have thought of that. And that's kind of a nice segue too of just what do you think we can do to get more women in dev tools? And maybe Michelle, you can kick us off.
Okay, so I have a theory.
Yes.
I don't know if this is, you guys tell me if you agree or not, but I believe that we actually will see more women in dev tools, or we're seeing, a decent, surprising amount there, because women innately just want to help, right? Like we want to help solve other problems and other people. And when you're in dev tools, you get to interact with your customers a lot more than you might be in more of like an external facing product role. And so I think that there's a strong opportunity to recruit women to dev tools, but we need to, we need to make sure that we are supportive of them and that we are explaining the problem space to them and like the opportunity in a way that really resonates for them. And I think that a lot of this stuff is just more like a language barrier. And once I know I've had many conversations with females about, what does dev tools really mean? And once I explain it to them, they're like, oh, that actually sounds more fun than this other stuff that I'm doing. And so I think that there's a real opportunity for us there.
Yeah. Shania, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm quite prolific in my thoughts. I think just like basically piggybacking on what Michelle said, like we need to be able to just support more women in developer tools, and there just needs to be a few pioneers, right? To just say that it's cool and it's really awesome. And, particularly with dev tools, I think that they're basically force multipliers because you enable developers to do something better to enable their end users. And we just need more women in dev tools. I mean, Snowflake had the biggest freaking IPO like ever, right? And just like, there's no women there on their founding team. So I'm just like, we just need to say, this is what we're doing. Hey, people, come join us. Learn from like all of you amazing women in what you do, and just kind of have some people to say, yes, let's all do this together.
Totally.
Yeah, I would. I'm sorry. Yeah, I definitely agree. There should definitely be way more women in dev tools. I get really excited when I meet like female founders. It's super exciting to meet all of you. One thing that I think is helpful too is talking about like the difference between a sponsor and a mentor. And I think a lot of people talk about how, they think, oh, I should mentor this person to help them get to the next stage of their career, to like find the confidence to start a company. And it's really about like sponsoring them. So like talking to their manager about the great work they do, putting them up for opportunities. If they're starting a company, helping them or like advocating for them when you're talking to other investors to get funding. So yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And can I just add on one more thought, and this is more generally, with women in technology, and something that I think that we really need to do is we need to have real honest conversations with our leadership when we're not happy and be willing to walk away, right? Being willing to leave that job or leave that team because it's not a good fit, rather than leaving the industry, which actually might be a really good fit if you were on the right team. And so I think that there's a lot of people that just feel like, all right, I got this job, I've got this team, I've got this project, I've made a commitment, I have to see it through. And the reality here is that employment is a two-way street, and they need to be treating you well, and you need to be performing for them. And if one of those pieces is not working, then it's not the right fit for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love it. And I can see in the comments you're getting a well said, and totally agree with that. And I can't think of a better group of 3 women to kind of lead the way, especially for female CEOs, and just CEO in general, let's be clear. And, when I think about early stage startups, I'm also fascinated, right? You have kind of incumbents that you're competing with. You have other early stage startups. And so, and then in DevTools, particularly, you have open source projects as well, which, aren't necessarily mutually exclusive from companies, but they're there. And so what do you see as the biggest threat to early stage DevTools companies? And kind of as leaders, how do you think about mitigating those threats? And maybe Shanea, you can kick it off for us.
Yeah, I think honestly, okay, this is going to be spicy. I think that the thing that's the biggest threat is just like the reputation of our industry, right? Like a lot of companies do a lot of really kind of shitty things, right? And there's a lot of things that could be threats, like the big company. I can talk about the big companies. I've worked with big companies. I've worked for Google and all the places. But I think that if we don't do the things that require creating a good business, like if we don't think about our users, if we don't think about, particularly in developers, if we don't think about all of the different types of developers, or we aren't thinking about people that we're serving, or the teams that we have in our companies and making sure that we support them, that's the biggest threat to early stage companies. Because there's plenty of opportunity. There's plenty of things left to build, right? There's plenty of problems that need to be solved. We need to be able to get a group of people together and support them, and make sure that they can live their best lives building solutions for the world, and not doing really kind of shitty things for them to them.
Yep. Marissa, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I'd also say something that came to mind for me was just like focus and discipline for companies. And maybe that's not a threat, like a certain trend or something, but I think especially, with developer tools, you have so many choices with like what stack you use, which services you integrate with. And there's a lot of different things that you could build, but I think it's important, especially in the early age, to kind of like simplify that mental model for the user, and really double down on like what your product is best at. Yeah.
And I agree with both of those. I think what I've seen is that it really comes down to like two really big things. And there's a lot of different threats, like the team that you build and who you choose as your investor. There's a lot of different potential challenges, but there's a huge opportunity in the marketplace. And what you really need to do is make sure that you are really thoroughly understanding your customers. You cannot assume that just because it worked at that one company or two companies that you're at, that it's true of the general industry. And so having lots and lots and lots and lots of conversations with potential customers, and not even that you're trying to sell to them, you're just trying to understand the problem space and if this idea that you have really makes sense for them. And then the second piece of this is really making sure that you have a business model that's going to work and it's going to scale. And I think that a lot of people have like these really great ideas, but there's no really good way to monetize them. And if you take that time to think about it up front, you can kind of shift the business in a direction that would be more viable.
Yeah, I think those are all great answers. Just doing a lot of upfront work and, understanding the dev tools industry and being really focused. Awesome answers. And, very, sort of similarly and kind of piggybacking on that topic, I'm sure a lot of the folks on this call would love to be CEO someday. And so what is the one piece of advice you have for a new founder? And maybe Marissa, you can kick us off.
Sure. Yeah. I guess I would just say, you can get started like whenever you want, even if you just want to start it as a side project, and you don't really need anyone's permission. And there's going to be people early on who like, try to reduce your idea or dismiss it. Like probably more people than are excited about it, but, just listen to the people who are excited about it and, make sure that invest in the people that are cheering for you. So yeah, I would say go for it if anyone wants to.
Mm-hmm. Michelle, what are your thoughts on being CEO and your advice for new CEOs?
I think trust and transparency go a long way. And you need to find partners and advisors and potentially invite those advisors to be investors in the company. If they are people that feel like they are upfront and honest and direct with you, and people that you can trust just to give you the truth. And I think that is so huge, to find those right partners. Just like people like Shanea and Renee, who have given me advice as we were starting, I think that those things are so incredibly valuable, and it makes all of the difference. And so I guess the other piece of this is really, don't try to do it alone. Go and find a network of support and find out people who have done this before, because if you pull all of that information, you're going to find a lot of very common themes, and those are really good lessons for you to learn vicariously through others if you can.
Yeah.
Plus one to that. Yeah. I think the advice that I would give, because I would say very similar to what Michelle said, most of us really are just learning as we go, right? And that's very similar to like if you're a CEO or if you're a junior dev, right? And in addition to, what hasn't been said, what has really, really helped me besides my support system is reading a lot. I read a lot. I listen to Audible a lot. And getting frameworks and getting information in as quickly as possible has really helped me to grow my career. And I didn't just one day decide to be CEO. Like I kind of like stepped up over time and grew from like over several years until I had the confidence to do it. And the same things that I do today are the same things that I did 5 years ago. And so I think that all the things that we're talking about today, finding your support system, being transparent, actually communicating your needs, are relevant at any stage, whether you want to be a CEO today or if you are just getting your first developer job.
Yeah, I think all of that is well said across the board. And you made me think of something, which is just, how much content there is out there right now, whether that's articles and podcasts and Twitter. And I think it's an awesome time to learn, particularly in the DevTools space. And so very curious what everyone's favorite thing is or most helpful thing is to read, whether that's for company building or just to your domain specifically, but open to recommendations. And maybe Michelle, I'd love to hear your recommendation first.
So this is a great question. I don't have any one source that I go to. In fact, I try to aggregate across a variety of sources just so I can make sure that I'm not missing something. But I would say some of the ones that I enjoy reading the most would be articles on Medium, taking the time and just, liking the stuff that you like, and you'll continue to get good recommendations. And there's also something called Stratechery, if you're not familiar with that. And that has been also just something that I just really enjoy reading and hearing Ben's thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'm a big Ben Thompson fan as well. I'm right there with you. Shanea, what about you? What's your favorite thing to read?
She's muted.
Oh, yeah, I get it. I was in that boat earlier on the panel. I totally get it.
Okay, I was trying to move my chair and not disturb anybody, so I'm muting myself. Anyway, actually, what I'm reading right now is not related at all to DevTools, so I'm going to share anyway. Yeah. But Unapologetically Ambitious is what I'm reading right now. It's about and her name is escaping me, but it was just released, and she was a female CEO of color at a tech company. She used to work for IBM, and it's just about how to be just unapologetically ambitious. And my first podcast that I'm not really a podcast because it sounds like talk radio without the music. But my very first podcast that I actually really love is by Bethany Frankel. She just launched a new podcast. She had Skinny Girl Cocktails, and she's just had some pretty amazing people on Bosemase James from Netflix, CMO Netflix, and she's pretty famous, and Mark Cuban was on there, and it was just a really awesome, just like fantastic person to just listen to, very entertaining while I run, as far as like business and just how to just like live your best self.
Love it. Love it. We all need to be a little bit unapologetic, ambitious, I think.
For sure.
Marissa, what's your favorite thing to read?
Yeah, so my go-to recommendation, it's kind of like a timeless book. It's High Output Management by Andy Grove. And I read it once a year, every year. I'm probably due for my reread. But yeah, it has like such great advice in it. I especially like the first chapter where it kind of talks about this kind of engineer, like manufacturing process. I think it's called like the breakfast factory. And it's really cool because it talks about how you assess quality at each step. And I think it's just a great framework for thinking about any sort of process. And then it also has a great section on one-on-ones and how they're really undervalued as a management tool. And it talks about like different strategies for how to invest in them. So yeah, every once in a while I'll also like Google some notes and reread the notes and then reread the book. So yeah.
Actually, Marissa, you just made me think of another book that I absolutely love, which is called Principles by Ray Dalio. So if you're not familiar with that, that is just a book that really just describes different principles that they use to articulate what the goal is at Bridgewater. So everybody has clarity. And when you really truly break it down, it's like, wow, this makes a lot of sense because there's so much miscommunication in the organization that by defining your principles up front, so everybody knows here's how we're going to make decisions and here's how we're going to operate, saves a lot of confusion and misunderstandings down the road. And so if you've not read that, I would recommend it.
Yeah, I've read Principles too, and I will +1 that one. There's a question from the audience, so I want to ask it, which is, there's a perception that dev tools should be free, at least for individuals. And I totally agree with that. How do you tackle it and get your first customers? So Shanea, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's weird because like, in order to like get customers at all, you have to meet their expectations, right? So if everyone determines that it should be free, then you should have some free component. And so what we do, what we're playing around with, is our data flow, which is our first visualization, is going to be free, right? So, and developers it'll be based on like a credit and usage system that there'll be an amount of credits that you can use. Just try it out, understand what's going on, and then there'll be features for larger teams and enterprises that features that most individual developers don't give a crap about, and then those things are things that you pay for, and so that's basically how we'll tackle it.
Yep. Marissa, what do you think?
So sorry, the question was about free tools.
Right. Is there like a perception that dev tools should be free, and what do you pay for? Is it in kind of an open core model, bottoms up?
Yeah. So we have thought about offering a free tier. One thing that we have done until then is like we invest in open source projects, which is really just energizing because anyone can contribute and give feedback and ideas. So yeah, that's been something exciting. And these projects are kind of geared towards solving the larger problem that a lot of our customers face. So it's kind of like if Instantish can't address that problem completely right now, at least we can give you these resources or free tools in the meantime. And I think it's it's one of our company values is just kind of like generosity. So when you're doing something, not always thinking about like, oh, how is this gonna directly lead to revenue like extremely quickly. It's more about like proving to our customers that we're on their side and actually trying to solve their problem, even if that's doing some free tools. And I'm just really excited about open source in general. So definitely wanted to incorporate that.
Yeah. Michelle, I'd be very curious to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there is certainly a perception that dev tools should be free. And I agree with Shanea that they should be up to a point, right? that there's this expectation, but I think that also we should look at giving away dev tools for free in a different light, which is that we really need to level the playing field here for like small and medium-sized businesses. And so in our case, we're giving away, we'll be giving away like a community edition that's going to be fully functional Jupyter notebook that's very collaborative, and it's meant to be good for a single individual or good for a team, and then you can grow all the way up to the enterprise. But when you're in that single person mode, right, you usually don't have a lot of support. You don't have a lot of like understanding from management about why you need to buy these things. And so it's not really until you start growing that you're able to get those types of budgets behind you. And then you've got other companies that are like nonprofits or that are small businesses that just don't have the money, can't afford it at all. And yet we need to give them the same kind of tools so that they can continue to compete and stay in business. And so I'm a strong advocate for open source. I'm a strong advocate for some sort of premium type of model for a lot of these dev tools, or more generally just software tools in general.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And I know we're about at time, so I was going to get to our very last question, but I want to read a comment from the audience first, which is, Marissa, Shanea, Michelle, keep speaking, building excellent companies. You have the right stuff to grow and create.
Oh, we heart you.
Thank you.
And you know, my final question, which I'm actually personally dying to just know the answer to, is that any tips or tricks to hire and sell? Because I certainly see it with the companies I work in. And I think those are two of the absolute hardest things to do, particularly at the early stage. And I couldn't think of a better group of people to just, you know, crack that for us. And so Michelle, maybe you can start off with your thoughts.
Sure. You know, I think it really, for both the customer selling and for hiring, when you're in this early stage, it comes down to transparency and spending the time. So if you have somebody that is an amazing employee that's at some company that they, you know, it's a very prominent company and you're trying to recruit them, or just someplace that they're not quite sure if they want to make that leap, especially in today's times, you need to give them all of the information so that they can really make an informed decision. And it's not really about pushing them one way or the other. It's about really laying out your case and saying, look, here's why I think this is a great opportunity. Let's talk about the company and the company culture. Let's talk about the team. Let's talk about the customers. Let's talk about what this is going to look like in the next year, in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years. And when you take that time to answer all of their questions and really lay out your case, we've been very, very successful with recruiting, taking that approach. And then similarly with customers, the same thing, you know, just being transparent about where we are, what our goals are, and trying to find things that are win-wins for both of us has been very effective as well. And actually also on taking the time with the customers, take the time to research them, take the time to read their blog post or watch their videos or trying to understand the business. And if you're in super, super early stages and you really need those customers, take the time to personalize your demos, right? It's going to take time, but when they look at those demos, it's going to feel familiar. And so now they're not sitting there trying to understand, you know, what is this all about? They can see things that feel familiar and they can immediately start to grasp the benefit of your product.
That is it. The great tips all around, especially the piece on personalized demos. That's one I haven't heard yet. So I'm going to definitely hang on to that in my back pocket. Shanea, what do you think?
Funny story. I definitely stole Michelle's job description. So, so that was a key piece, and everybody that we interviewed loves it, by the way. I think that it's our responsibility as, you know, as people on the call, like, grow into leadership positions, to create culture from the beginning. And we have had a heavy just time and energy put into making a good interview process, making sure that it's fair, making sure that we are bringing in people who are kind, self-aware, who provide good feedback and good communication skills in addition to their tech skills. Because as we decide to grow the company, we want to make sure that we actually, you know, walk the walk. Is that the phrase? Walk the walk of our having an inclusive culture. And we have turned down some really awesome people because there's been red flags in our interview process, just personally. And it's really, really important to us. And I think that carries over, not just in candidates, but also in our customer calls, right? The way that we do business, the people that, like, our customers interact with, they can clearly see that we desperately care about our people and really care about the problem that we're trying to solve. And that just makes everything a lot easier, to be honest with you. And I think that that's generally kind of the way I've approached things throughout my career, like before building a company, if that makes sense, even on just teams.
Marissa, what do you think?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Like authenticity goes a long way, and kind of showing that you care about your customers. And yeah, selling was definitely something that I had to adjust to. I've never done it before. I've been in engineering all my career, so it was like very different. And I kind of try to always default back to just listening as much as possible, which is interesting because, you know, sometimes I'm really excited about talking about, you know, features and that we've released and things like that. And so, yeah, I think just listening to the people that you're talking to as much as possible is always a good thing.
Yeah. Plus one to everything. And I see a question, and I'm assuming Angie will give me a warning if we're very over time, but I may just get this one question from the audience so that they can participate too. So actual last question. Would love your insights on pivoting your business. How hard is it when you try to love the problem you're trying to solve? I'd be curious because I'm not sure. I actually don't know this, but I actually don't know if any of you have had to pivot. So I will just let the first person, if somebody wants to just chime in.
I had to not necessarily pivot, but because I have experience in products, like we did a lot of like, oh, what could we build to solve this problem first? And so we initially had an idea and then we pivoted before we built it, which made it a little bit easier. But in the event that we talked to our users and we talked to the developers and they were like, no, this is hella stupid, you shouldn't build this, we would have absolutely thrown it out without question and built what is important for them. And I will still do that today. Everything that we built, I could probably throw out tomorrow and start again. We just need to make people happy. We just really want to make people happy.
I do think that there's something to that. Do what you love or love what you do. And I couldn't be an astronaut, so I decided to be in dev and to love that. And it's really worked out well for me. But, you know, it was a conscientious choice for me to sit there and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I think this is a great career. And then I'm just really going to go in, you know, with everything and really embrace it. And it's been really great. And I think that whenever you're trying to start a company, you have to have the same mentality. Like you truly have to love what it is that you're doing or you're going to be miserable. And so if you're not finding like the right problem space or if you're not finding something doesn't feel right, I think you need to just continue to try to solve that problem and pivot until you can find something that works for you and for the market and for your customers and as a business model. But the way I've seen it in my experience has been that there's always a path forward. Always, right? You just need to sit there and take the time to look at it, think about things from different perspectives. If you can't see it, go talk with others, get their input and see if that opens up your eyes. But I truly believe there's always a way forward.
Thank you so much, ladies. This is super insightful for me and to everyone else. I'm sure, you know, you'll be able to get a chance to look at the amazing comments that everybody had to share. So thank you all.
So why don't we get right to it? Our first lightning talk is from Karin, who is a senior software engineer at Salesforce. And she graduated from UC Berkeley with a degree in computer science and minored in human rights. So I'm really excited to welcome her to give a quick lightning talk. So welcome.
Hi, let me share my screen. Cool. So yes, hi, I'm Karin. I'm a software engineer at Salesforce where I've been doing front-end web development for about 2.5 years. So a lot of my day is definitely spent in the Chrome dev tools. So I just wanted to share some tips and tricks that I've learned along the way that have really helped me get my job done on a day-to-day basis. So for those of you who aren't really familiar with what the Chrome DevTools are, it's sort of like an browser inbuilt IDE that allows you to explore everything that's on your page. So this is everything from the DOM to your source code to all the network requests that are going out, among a lot of other cool things. So I'm just gonna jump straight into a demo. So this is a super simple web page that I have. It's just a bunch of inputs and some buttons, and it's sort of like a calculator, except instead of adding numbers, we're adding strings based on these different inputs. So for example, if I tick these two things and I hit this build query button, we get some output. Straight off the bat, it looks a little suspicious because we've hit NA here and EU, but we're seeing two NAs. So what I would do from here is I would open up the Chrome Dev Console, and you can either do that by doing Command-Shift-I, or what I personally usually end up doing is right-clicking and hitting Inspect. So now that I have this open, I can use this nifty little tool and sort of explore all the different elements on my page. And so what I usually like to do is select the button that did the thing that looks incorrect. If we look down here, we can also see the console and some suspicious looking things. And you can actually just click straight on these things and it'll take you to that line of code. And you can just easily see what's happening. In case you have a lot of things, for example, there's just now a lot of noise because I've clicked the button a lot of times, you can actually filter this. And this is really helpful because you can just really filter by type or even by source file. So if you're working in a large code base, you probably have way more than just the one file, and you can see exactly where your console logs are coming from. But back to the bugs that we're trying to figure out. So in this case, we know, well, at least I know there's only one file, so it's definitely somewhere in this demo.html file. But if you're new to a team or you're new to the code, you might not know where to look to actually fix this bug. So what I like to do is I actually, again, like to go to the button. And I think a really easy way to figure out where the code is if you go over to this event listeners tab, you can actually see a whole list of all the event listeners on something. So in this case, I just have a simple click function and I can jump straight to the code. And so then from here, what I would do is I would stick a breakpoint in, and you can do that just by clicking on the line number. You can also make this a conditional breakpoint. Other things you can do are adding logs. So if you don't have a console.log statement, but you want one, you can actually do that straight in the console here. So I'm gonna go ahead and click this button. And now we can see that our debugger is paused. And from here, we have some pretty basic IDE functions. So I'm just gonna go ahead and step into my code. And now we see a whole bunch of stuff appear. So these are all my variables in my local scope. This is pretty badly written code, so there's a lot of things here and they're pretty poorly named, but we'll just go with it. And yeah, you can also see the call stack. So again, this is really simple code, but if you're working in a more complex code base, this becomes really helpful because you can just jump around and it'll take you straight to that line of code and it'll open up the file so you know exactly where it is. So we're gonna just jump ahead, and now we're trying to like figure out why it says NA twice instead of the expected EU. So again, this is pretty trivial code. You could probably eyeball it, but you could also just step through it. And what I like to do personally is add these watch expressions. You can actually see the variables down here, but obviously there's a lot here and that can become pretty overwhelming. So if I know I'm looking for something in particular, I'll just go ahead and add it up here. So in this case, I want index list. There's also a console down here. So theoretically, you could type what you want to look at every time you step over a line of code, but that becomes pretty inconvenient if you're really stepping over a lot of code. You can also hover. So there's a lot of ways to view the same information, and there's definitely easier ways and harder ways, but there's a lot of ways. So this is sort of how I would begin to approach a bug if I had one. just looking at all these different things, looking at what's happening in the variables, stepping through code, stepping through my call stack. So that's just sort of an introduction into what you can do there. One quick thing I want to show also is sort of how you can play with these DOM elements and style them straight in your browser. So from here, you can actually just drag and drop your elements in case you want to see what it looks like somewhere else. You can also pop over to styles and you can do CSS straight in there. So for example, if I want to change the color of the button, you can see here it's green now, and I can just sort of play around and it'll immediately update. And you can also just update classes or edit HTML. And there's really just a bunch of really powerful stuff you can do straight in the browser so that you don't have to keep going back and forth between your IDE and the browser. You can also force states. So this is helpful if there's something that's only happening when you're hovering. And there's just definitely a lot of really cool things to explore in the Chrome Dev Console, DevTools. So if you haven't already, I would highly encourage everyone to explore all the different tabs, all the different buttons. They also like to hide things in the little things. So just definitely look around. There's lots of neat things you can do. So hopefully that was a good introduction and you learned something and you've all been inspired to use the Chrome DevTools more. So if you have any questions, you can ping them in the Zoom chat or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Thanks.
Thank you, Karin. That was awesome. Our next speaker.
All right. So the topic of my today's session is UI automation with EmberJs. And before I talk about testing, what exactly is EmberJs? So EmberJs is an open source free JavaScript client-side framework which helps us in building web applications. There are different kind of other JavaScript frameworks like React, Angular that you might have heard of. A very important aspect of development is that we want to make sure that every time we are going live to the production, the existing functionality is working as is. There are no regression bugs introduced. And in order to do so, either we maintain a manual checklist and execute those test cases every time we are going live, or we be a little smart and use all those online infrastructure and tools that are open source and automate these test cases. So talking about testing, Ember provides 3 types of tests out of the box: unit, integration, and acceptance. Unit test actually forms the basis of the foundation of your test suite. Whenever you are writing tests to actually test the method, you're writing tests to actually test your code, those kind of tests, they fall into category of unit test. An example is like, you might have a function in your web app which is taking a string input, and string has like comma separated numbers. And after taking that, as an input, it is stripping the numbers of the string and returning the sum. So if there are like a lot of possible combinations around this method that you can have, like, the input can be empty string, or that input of the string can have like decimal numbers or float numbers, or it doesn't have numbers at all. So if you're actually testing your method, with various combinations, those kind of tests, they would fall into category of unit test. Whenever you create, components like model or serializers, adapters in your Ember app, in your web app, Ember gives them, like, it auto-generates those unit tests for you. I mean, the file for you. You would have to definitely build those test cases on that. Talking about the integration category, so, whenever you're developing a web app, you would be adding component to your applications. An example is like, your web app can contain an image tile where you click on the image enlarges, and you click again on that image, it restores back to its normal size. So if you're having test cases around a component, a single entity, those would be categorized under integration or rendering test. The third category, application or the acceptance test, they actually refer to test where you are actually mimicking the user interaction, where you are actually mimicking a user story and automating that as your test case. So I'm going to give you an example of how can we write and how can we add an acceptance test case. I have this web app in my local. It's a super simple web app. It has Super Rentals homepage, and there is about and contact. You click on about, it's going to land you you click on about, it's going to land you on about page. You click on contact, there's contact page. And on Super Rentals homepage, you can see the listing of few rental properties. Let me tell you, the source code is available online on GitHub. So in case you want to explore it after the session, feel free to download the source code and explore it for yourself. So here is the source code, and for this app, and this is where test resides. There is this folder called test. And as I mentioned that there are 3 categories: unit, integration, and acceptance, to categorize the test. Now let's try real quick automating a scenario where if a user types about, we want to make sure that he lands into the URL is about, and that this about page gets rendered, and let's say that there is this contact us button on this particular page. So how would we automate that scenario? So the first thing is that under acceptance test, you would have to create a test file. Now, either you can create it via manually new file, or you can use the power of Ember CLI that gets installed when you set up Ember at your end. You would have to install it explicitly. So, I'm just going to run this command. It's a super simple command which is going to create a file for you. So I've named my test file as about. I mean, you could name it anything you want. So this is how the test file got created with a boilerplate code already into it. And I'm going to explain these 3 statements that we have in our code. So the first thing, it is importing the module called QUnit. So QUnit is the actually test framework that comes by default with EmberJs. There are other testing frameworks that are available in the market. You can use that too, but this one is default. What it does is you see that there is this assert method. This assert method has support from QUnit. There are other things that QUnit support is you organization of test. Maybe you want to label your test, or you want to skip your test. So all those, organization of test cases, all that support, you can get that from QUnit. The second package that we are importing over here is Ember Test Helpers. This is a super important package because it provides you support to mimic all those user interactions that I talked about. For example, you want to mimic a click event in your test. So that click event comes from this Ember Test Helper package. A really important point about this is that this package makes sure that whenever an event is run, all these events are asynchronized. So whenever these events are run, it makes sure that Ember is returned in a synchronized state. So before execution of of another step after the event, it would make sure that event that has currently been executed is completed. There is a promise that is being returned, and then only you move to another, executing this another line. This particular line setup application test is helping in booting the application instance and all these interaction helpers methods that I just talked about in Ember Test Helpers. So you get this test case. What this test is doing is it is just visiting this about URL and making sure that the current URL is this one /about. Now you can add test case further, and you can just make sure that, as I mentioned, we want to automate the scenario where contact us button is getting rendered on this particular page. So I have this code already. I'm going to just copy paste it to avoid time. So what this set of code is doing is it is finding the DOM element, which is referring to contact us button. This is the CSS selector for this particular contact us button. And once it finds that button, it is clicking on this particular button. Once you click on it, it is going to navigate. It is going to navigate user to this particular link. So we can add an assertion for that also, that user gets navigated to the current URL after the button is clicked, is getting in touch. Yeah. The one more thing is like the current URL. This is again, this support is also again coming from Ember Test Helper, and it is a synchronous helper. So this supports both synchronous and asynchronous. I have to, since I'm using this click, I would have to mention that over here. So we have just created a simple test case where, we are trying to automate that if user, lands on this about page, there is this particular button, and if he clicks on contact us button, he gets to getting in touch page. Now, before I wrap my session up, let's see how can we run the tests. So there is this particular command, Ember Test Server. This is going to spin the server, test server, and all those test cases that are here in my project are going to run. So just going to execute this command. And the support for this particular command also comes from Ember CLI. So this is how the test server looks like. And imagine like I had 28 tests, including all integration, acceptance, and unit test cases. They all ran in like few milliseconds. You can also like, if you notice that I have this, set of code where it is, I'm mentioning the module. This helps in, actually scoping of your test cases. Like if you do not want to run all your test cases, and you just want to filter out by a particular module, you can just click it from here and then, maybe just apply it. So just to run the particular test case, a particular test file. So that's it I had. I'm going to wrap my session up now, but let me tell you whatever I just said. It's a very preliminary information, but I hope this can act as a primer, and everything that I showed you is open source. It's there on GitHub, the source code for it. Ember is open source. So, you just go ahead, download the source code, install Ember at your end, and, keep exploring. That's it.
We're going to hand over the mic to Pearl next. Pearl, I'm going to do your intro. Pearl is a senior front-end developer at Propeller Health in Wisconsin, Madison. Welcome, Pearl.
Thank you. What a fantastic panel. That was really, I was really thrilled to be able to hear your experiences.
Can see your screen and we can see your video and hear you, so go ahead and get started.
All right. Well, I'm thrilled to be here and thrilled to have just heard that fabulous panel. So let me get started here. So my name's Pearl. I work at a digital health company in Madison, Wisconsin. So a couple hours different, so it's almost my bedtime. I won't dawdle. Whoops, sorry, technical difficulties. So in the next 5 to 7 minutes, my goal is to answer for you 2 questions. First, what is a progressive web app, or PWA, as the cool kids say, and why might you want to build one? Now, I'm not going to talk about how to build one. There's no code in this presentation. We don't have time for that, but I'll point you to some resources to get started. So what is a PWA? A PWA is a website. This website that I'm showing you is a PWA. It's also the site for a conference that I'm organizing, so you can take a look at that later. But getting back on track, a PWA is a website that can act like a native mobile app in some important and interesting ways. For instance, a PWA is installable. So here's an image of that website that I showed you installed on my laptop. And you can see it looks like any other app that you would have installed. You can also install a PWA on your device's home screen. It will live like any other app you've got on your phone in a little icon. And when you click the icon, it will expand without the browser Chrome around it. So it will display just like any other app will display. not only is it installable, but PWAs work offline. And this work offline stuff is super important. This brings us to the heart, really to the magic of the PWA. So the superhero of the PWA is the service worker. A service worker is a web worker, like Spider-Man, but unlike Spider-Man, it's written in JavaScript, and it acts as kind of a proxy between your web app and the network. So in our normal day-to-day, our web applications interact directly with the network, with servers on the network. But you can drop a service worker in there that can mediate those interactions. Service workers can intercept network requests. And this means that some pretty cool things can happen. So for example, say your web app makes a request to a server and you've got a service worker. The service worker could see that request, pass it on to the server, and then when the server responds, the service worker can take whatever assets are in that response, so images, data, HTML, CSS, it can take those assets and tuck them in its cache. The service worker has its own cache, and it can put assets there. And then the next time it receives the same request, the service worker could say, oh, well, I already have the assets that I need to respond. So it can just respond with the assets in the cache. So that's pretty huge. That means that your application can respond to a request without making a round trip to the network. And it can even respond when there is no network access at all. So I think that this is super exciting. I think the implications of this are pretty huge. So first, a service worker can make your web application super reliable, regardless of network connectivity. And it can also make your web application super fast. Because the service worker can serve assets from the cache without having to make the round trip to the network, it can load almost instantly if it has the assets it needs in the cache. So even if you don't really care about installability, a progressive web app can really help you have great performance. So I think that's pretty cool, right? This is just only scratching the surface. Service workers aren't the only tech involved in progressive web apps, and there's a lot more that service workers can do. But enough about service workers. Let's talk about you. Should you build a PWA? PWAs aren't the solution to every problem. So for instance, if you need to interact with device APIs that aren't supported by browsers, then it would make a lot more sense for you to make a native app. But if your use case allows it, a PWA can be a great alternative to a native app. I mean, first, it's a lot cheaper and easier to make one web application than multiple mobile apps plus a website. And in addition, if you're a web developer rather than a native developer, creating a PWA is working with a completely familiar web stack. It's HTML, JavaScript, CSS. Even if you don't really, even if your target isn't mobile, and using the progressive web app techniques can make any web application quicker, more reliable, and installable, and altogether more awesome. There are lots of resources out there for getting started. These are a few that I would recommend. I would start with the free course on Udacity. It's a good course and a great place to start. And if you have any other questions about resources or anything else, we can do what a good service worker would do and take it offline. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Goel.
So we are now going to roll into breakout sessions. We're going to get off the Zoom and go to a Zoom meeting where the breakout sessions can commence. We're going to have Girl Geeks in groups of 4 to 6. This is the feedback we got last time, which is that people like to meet in small groups, so we're going to be doing that. So just follow a link in the chat. It's also in your email that you received when you signed up for this event. So we will just click on that and head over and meet you at that Zoom meeting, which is, again, the link in the email that confirmed this event at about 5 p.m. Pacific time. So I'll see you on the other side.